Now, the topic this evening is a very practical one. Thanks to Greta Van Susteren, you're all about to learn, or at least start to learn, everything you need to know about social media, which is the title of Greta's new book. Now, you no doubt already realize just how pervasive and powerful social media has become. It's how many of us now get our news, how we communicate with family and friends, how we market or get alerted about emergencies and disasters, and much more. According to a couple of statistics that are in Greta's book, nearly 3/4 of all Americans go online each day, and much of that traffic is headed to social media. About 1/4 of the people are online constantly, and that percentage rises to 1/3 among the 18 to 29-year-olds. So that's how prevalent social media have become. And yet there are still many of us, particularly of a certain generation, who lack a basic knowledge of the various platforms and how to operate them. And that's where Greta's book can be of great assistance. It's intended not just for beginners, but also for those who want to maybe move up a level or two. You'll find separate chapters on the main platforms: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Snapchat. You'll also learn about Tumblr, WhatsApp, YouTube, and some other channels. And along with advice about setting up profiles, posting videos, editing images, and protecting your privacy, you'll benefit from stories that Greta shares about her own social media experiences and those of others, some of which are humorous, some cautionary, but all of which are instructive. Greta herself has been on social media since, as she writes, quote, before it had a name. She started with a blog in 2003, and that's before the advent of Facebook and smartphones. And she's gone on to use every platform. In 2016, her Twitter followers passed 1 million. And this year, her Facebook followers topped 1.2 million. Now, to get that many followers, it helps to be famous, which, of course, Greta is as a result of her years on television. After starting out as a lawyer, she found her way onto TV as a legal analyst, and then before she knew it, CNN hired her to co-host The Burden of Proof and The Point. In 2002, she switched to Fox News, where she hosted the popular current affairs show On the Record for nearly 15 years. And then for 6 months this year, she headed a program on MSNBC called For the Record. And most recently, she's been doing TV interviews for Voice of America TV. So here, very much on the record, is Greta Van Susteren.
Thank you, Bradley. And if there's any doubt whether my Greta Wire blog in 2003 or 4 when I launched is my own, the mere number of mistakes in spelling and editing proves it all, that I did it all my very own. It's all mine. So thank you all for being here. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about the book. First, it's for everybody over the age of 35 who either missed the social media revolution or thinks he or she knows everything but wants to learn some more tips. And it's also for everybody under the age of 35 who is so sick and tired of answering questions to those of us who are over 35. So for about for less than $20, you can now, so they can now sort of save themselves from those questions, because I don't know about you, but I've often asked those questions over and over and over again, as though the answer just does not seem to sink into my head. How did the book get started? It's quite simple. Is that, as Bradley has said, I started this blog in 2003 or 4, and I sort of held myself out in my own mind, obviously in my own mind, that I was an expert. And I thought I knew everything. And then about 2 years ago, at about Thanksgiving time, one of my many nieces was at my home, and she's about 25, and being the person who I thought was sort of sophisticated when it came to social media, I asked her a question that I thought was complicated or sophisticated, or at least reflected my great knowledge in the area. And her response was, "Seriously?" And I said, "Yes, seriously." And she said, "You don't know that?" And I said, "What do you think? I'm just trying to get practice asking questions? Of course I don't know that." And then she very politely explained to me what the answer was, whatever it was. Of course, all I could think of is I remember when she was this high and couldn't even talk, and so I'm thinking like, and where, she's obviously now how things have changed. So I thought, well, maybe if I don't know some of these things, I'm sort of holding myself out in my own mind as an expert in social media that maybe other people didn't know. So I then began to write about all I knew about social media, but unfortunately, as I began to write all I knew about social media, I had no idea that I really didn't know much about social media. It is so vast. It is incredible. And there were things that I thought I knew everything about Facebook, everything about Twitter. And the more I dug into it, the more I learned, is that how little I knew about it. It sort of always reminds me like when I was in college, when I was 20, I thought I knew everything. And lo and behold, as every day of my life since then, I've discovered how little I know because I keep learning things. So anyway, in researching the book, I learned so much. And the big challenge then was, how do you put this into a book? And I began writing the book, and I'd write a chapter and put it away, wake up the next day, and all of a sudden the technology changed on the chapter. I mean, it was the worst experience because I'm used to cable news is where you do breaking news and you do it just as it happens, and as soon as the day is over, fine, you can go on, go home. This was I always wondered how people who write for Time Magazine, Newsweek, how do you write for something that's going to sit on the shelf for a week? Well, now, of course, I was faced with the problem is how do you write a book about an area, technology, that literally changes overnight? It's unbelievable how things change. So that was probably my biggest challenge. The book, you'll learn about how, you'll learn some things through my mistakes. I've had some horrible blunders, as you might imagine, on social media. One of the ones I'll just tell you right now that you read about in the beginning, it was a rather most unfortunate situation because one night I was on at 10 o'clock at the time, and during about 10 minutes before my show was over, one of my colleagues came to me and said, "Do you have any Benadryl?" This is like in a commercial break, and I'm not usually like a grocery store or a drugstore in the middle of the show. And I said, "I don't know," and I said, "Maybe I do," and I found her some Benadryl. She took a Benadryl. She said she was having an allergic reaction. Show ends. We then walked to my then apartment in New York, and we bring one of my producers along, and we're going to open a bottle of wine, just have a glass of wine and sit and talk. Well, by the time we walked the 4 blocks to the apartment, the Benadryl had really hit my colleague, who is a younger woman than I am, and she has long blonde hair, and she sat down on the couch, and I opened the bottle of wine, and the producer and I went, and we're sitting here having a glass of wine. And my colleague who fell asleep, who was sitting on the couch, she fell asleep. And she's been working with me since my CNN days back in 1991. We were really close, and she knows all my nieces, and my nieces adore her. So as I got up to get a second glass of wine for my other colleague who had not taken the Benadryl, I noticed my colleague on the couch, and her hair was all askew. It looked really crazy, fully dressed. But she looked crazy. Her hair was all over. She was sound asleep. So I picked up my phone, snapped a picture of her, and sent it off to my nieces quickly, without missing a beat, without even text. It didn't need an explanation because they know her. They would have loved it. They would think it's funny. And my nieces' names are Eliza, Delaney, and Piera. And so it was simple. The next morning, so then had the glass of wine. My producer left. I had my other one, she was staying at the apartment that night, so she stayed on the couch, and I went to sleep. The next morning, I get an email from one of my producers, and she said, all it said was, "Why did you send that picture to Al Gore?" I thought to me, what an idiot. I mean, I thought to myself, who did she mean this for? Obviously, she didn't mean the email for me. She certainly couldn't have meant it for me. So I ignored it. Half an hour later, the phone rings, and because I thought, what stupid, I mean, who is she trying to send that to? Half an hour later, the phone rings, and she says to me, "Why did you send a picture of Debbie sleeping to Al Gore. And I said, this is like 2015, 15 years after he and President Clinton are the office. I said, I didn't send that to Gore. I mean, what are you talking about? I'm not some kind of sort of creep that sends pictures like that. I mean, you mean a blonde sleeping on a couch to a former vice president of the United States? I mean, I'm not an idiot. So anyway, I said I didn't. And she said, you did. I looked down at my phone, and autocorrect, any of you familiar with autocorrect? When I sent it to Eliza, it went to Al Gore. And I didn't even know I had Al Gore's, I didn't even know I had Al Gore's email address. I didn't even know it was in my contacts. In my business, we come across a lot of people in politics. So naturally, so I learned my lesson about being more careful in how I send things. I, of course, engaged in a dialogue with former Vice President Al Gore, and profusely apologized and told him that I was not in the business of sending former Vice Presidents of the United States pictures of sleeping blondes in the middle of the night with no message. And just, of course, it said Fox News in the address, which didn't help any. He was very gracious, and he accepted, but he said he figured it was a mistake. So, so I got off on. So you learn how, social media, it can be rather dangerous. I mean, so I'm really good about autocorrect now. Here's another problem I have with autocorrect. Is that when I send something, I have to be particularly careful, because the Greta, if autocorrect doesn't say Greta, it says something else. It says, and I look arrogant. It says great. Somebody else sign. I'm signing my name great. So autocorrect. But that's just the very beginnings of social media. But I've used social media in so many other ways. I write in the book about how. Social media is so immediate, but it has such an impact when you do crowdsourcing, when we all get on things. There's a president of Sudan who absolutely detests me. His name is Bashir. He's been president since 1989. He is responsible for genocide in the Darfur region, and I've been to Sudan. I've been in the Nuba Mountain region, where he is still continuing to do bombing people. They burn villages. They rape the women. They maim it. The people are literally living in caves, eating bugs and leaves, trying to escape the cruelty of the president of Sudan. He is under indictment in the International Criminal Court, and has been for a number of years, for genocide in the Darfur region. But he has managed to escape any sort of sense of justice. And after I was in Sudan, naturally, anybody would have, is you want to do something to try to stop this man. So I started a campaign using my social media. I'm just one person. Started social media to try to do something to bring attention to this atrocity and maybe get this man arrested. So I Facebook, I tweeted, I did everything you can imagine. Put pictures on Instagram of some of the. When you see the pictures, they're terrible, and just horrible. Everyone joined in, and I developed a community of people on Twitter and on Facebook who also wanted to be part of this. They were also outraged, so they would retweet tweets, and it would just it would explode all over. And when Bashir headed to South Africa about 3 years ago, the first thing first of all, I have a Google alert on him. Every time he moves, I know where he is. But as I said, so I was going to South Africa, so naturally what I do is I go to the homepage for the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and see that South Africa is a signatory to the ICC treaty, which means under their obligations is the minute that Bashir steps foot in that country, they're supposed to arrest him, turn him over to the ICC, and he gets his trial on genocide. So naturally, every time he goes to a country, whether it's South Africa or Chad or any place else, I roar up the crowds, the people who are after him, using social media as a means where everybody gets involved. And I do things like I'll tweet, President Bashir is headed to South Africa. South Africa is a signatory. Here's the phone number for the South African Embassy in Washington, D.C. Call them and tell them what you think he should do when he arrives. So naturally, there's a huge groundswell of people doing it, and others are all likewise trying to get him. But what happened was that I was such a I was so pursuant with this is that one day I found out that President Bashir wanted to send his foreign minister to talk to me. I thought, oh, really, talk to me? I thought, well, that's a little odd. And so I said, okay. And so he came to Washington. He was going to be at the UN in New York for the opening of the New York of the UN General Assembly, and so he came down from New York to see me at a hotel. My husband was there, and a couple other people, and he brought his entourage. And so anyway, we're sitting across the table, and he said to me that he'd come because President Bashir wanted me to know and wanted me to stop spreading the lies about him. That he felt, I almost got the sense he felt sorry for me because people were feeding me false information, and he was coming to tell me to stop my social media campaign. And he goes through this, and I sit politely, listen to him. And then at the end of when he finally had taken a long breath and I knew that he was finished, I said, "There's one problem with that." And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "I've seen it with my own eyes. It wasn't, I'm not being fed some." To which he responded, "You were in my country without our permission?" And I said, "Well, you do have me on that one." But yes, indeed, I had seen it and I had been there. But the point is this, is that everybody, in social media, everybody can get together. And everybody can join together and do incredible things. And there are stories in the book about what others have done with social media. And social media, it's not really new. All that's new is sort of these delivery platforms. I mean, think about it. We have these smoke signals. That's sort of social media. Anybody can see the smoke signals. That's social media. The party line, the telephone line, that's, social media. Everybody on the block can get on the phone. What's so different is that everything, of course, is amplified and in terms of how far you reach and, of course, the speed of the communication. A lot of people, they say they hate social media. And I get it. You go on... You go on any of these, especially Twitter. Twitter's like a fire hose of information, and you're going to see a lot of nasty things. I mean, every day I hear how horrible I look and how stupid I am. I mean, I see that every single day. But that's part of the territory. It goes to the territory, and I have a little fun with it. It's like because I think people are fundamentally very nice, and that for whatever reason they're all revved up about something. I mean, people get all revved up because I was at Fox News. People get all revved up because I was at MSNBC. People get all revved up because I was at CNN. I mean, everyone has a reason to get revved up. I mean, you're going to get your full share of everything, no matter what, and no matter what you do in life. But the thing is, if you use it effectively, I mean, if we sort of take back the internet, sort of take back social media, it's a great tool. If you wanted to learn tonight about the Rohingyas, if you want to do it fast, go to Twitter and do hashtag. That's the search function, hashtag Rohingya, and you're going to get taken to a page with all these tweets. Some of them are stupid, some of them are useless, but some are very informative, some are news organizations, and then you click on the link and you can go to something recent. I mean, it's incredible what you can do. I mean, you can do so much research. If you have a story, you have a Facebook page, right? Yep. I mean, you can't function in business without having a Facebook page. So to those who are sort of want to stay away from social media because they've heard bad things. You can't do your business anymore without those things. Those are important things in your business. I mean, Facebook. In fact, if you're not on social media, I recommend you start Facebook. And stay away till Twitter till you got some really thick skin. But I like Twitter. It's fast, but I like it. But there's just so much there, so many good things about it. But we're not taking it back. We're not sort of like. It seems like a daunting task. How can you ever? We didn't think we could win the Cold War. But think about it as that we really could sort of take back sort of the bad stuff on the internet because there's so many good people and it's incredible. It's incredible. How many of the good things you can do on social media. I was during the campaign of 2016, news organizations were making money hand over fist covering the election because it was wild. I mean, as we all know, it was very wild. And in the midst of it, in April of 2016, there was an earthquake in Ecuador. There were about 700 people killed, which, compared to Haiti, where there was probably about 300,000, it was not the number, but there's 700 people killed. Unbelievable, 700 people killed. And yet, no news organization, or virtually, I don't know of any news organization, maybe some did, but not enough to make it notice, responded to Ecuador. Did I say Peru or Ecuador? It's Ecuador was the earthquake. But nobody responded to it because everyone is following the campaign. And I totally get it, and I totally understand it. But I was able to hitchhike with an NGO down to Ecuador for 2 days or 3 days, and just to take a look around it. And there were no satellite trucks down there. I mean, it costs a fortune for these news organizations to do news gathering. And, you know, I'm sympathetic to the cost pressure that they're all under. But I found some rogue Wi-Fi at this broken down old airport because it had been hit by the earthquake. And I was able to go live, Facebook Live, which is just like is personal broadcasting. And so from Ecuador, in an earthquake, in April 2016, when there was virtually no attention, I could just pick up my iPhone and go live. And while I'm going live talking about it, people can type in questions. They can ask me questions, and I could respond to it. But I mean, it's just magnificent. I mean, think about it. You can all be your own TV stations broadcasting. You can do it in Periscope, which is owned by Twitter, and it can air, and it goes straight to Twitter. But they're just, I mean, it's just unimaginative where this is taking us in terms of the communication. I still love, you know, I have to admit, I still love the book. I'd still rather come to Politics and Prose and read a book and learn something because, you know, than be necessarily, you know, seduced by the internet in terms of my attention. But, you know, everything's a balance. But unless we sort of take command of, you know, social media, and if people shy away from it, that's bad for the rest of us. 'Cause we need the good people to flood it with the good stuff, with the smart stuff, the informative stuff, the fun stuff, the beautiful pictures, the beautiful places in the world, incredible issues, and that's where we get it. We're now getting a lot of it on social media. So I encourage people to get on social media. Look, your children and grandchildren are on social media, and even if you don't like it, you might want to know what they're looking at and what they're doing. And as of course, knowledge is always power. The more you know about it, the more power you have to guide people, younger people who might be looking at it. I love social media. It doesn't mean I don't get mad sometimes. Doesn't mean that I don't sometimes take the bait when someone says something and respond when I shouldn't. We all do that. Probably the tweeter-in-chief is the President of the United States, and a lot of controversy. In fact, there are people, I think news organizations have people assigned to following his tweets because he's quite a prolific tweeter. And by the way, he follows 45 people, and for the life of me, I don't know why, but I'm one of the 45. Which is sort of interesting. But I'll give you an example of how things get sort of distorted on Twitter. I love animals. Absolutely love animals. I've got 3 dogs, 3 cats. They run our lives. And I love elephants, and I don't like, and I know maybe some of you differ with me, but I don't like big game hunting of elephants just for the sake of having the trophies. I don't like that. And there was a report about 2 or 3 weeks ago that President Trump's administration, I don't know, Trump probably didn't know anything about it at the time. These administrations are big, but we always blame the presidents, whether it's Obama or Trump or Bush. We blame them for everything that's done, even downriver. And it said that they were going to lift the temporary ban that President Obama had put on this trophy hunting, which I supported President Obama doing that because I don't like this. And so anyway, a lot of people got involved in it. Ellen, who has DeGeneres, who has a huge social media following, she got involved in it. But many citizens got involved, and everybody sort of, started talking about this ban. Don't lift the temporary ban. So anyway. After some time, all of a sudden, President Trump tweets out that he's not lifting the ban. He's going to put on temporary suspension of whether he's going to lift the ban. He's going to take another look at it. I was very happy at that, and so I tweeted because I knew he followed me. I tweeted him, thank you, Mr. President, for doing that. Now comes the problem, is that some people were outraged at me. How can you thank him for even having considered lifting the ban? And I got that viewpoint, but my viewpoint was a little different. Is I want to encourage him. It's like if thanking him helps, so that he makes it permanent, this ban permanent, I'm all for it. But people, unfortunately, on Twitter, because there are only a few characters, used to be 140 characters, now it's 280, is that we oftentimes make the mistake of reading into what everybody does, and sometimes taking a rather sinister view of what people think or say or tweet instead of cutting people a break. So that's sort of the danger, mostly on Twitter. Facebook, of course, is longer form, longer text. You can do so much more on that. I hope the book is helpful to you. It was fun writing it. It's a little crazy having to change every 5 minutes on me, but it is a whole lot of fun writing it, and I think you'll find yourself empowered by getting on social media. If you aren't, I suspect everybody's on a little bit of social media. Who's on social media a little bit? At least some. Yeah. All right. Okay. Everybody's a little bit some. Good for you. And if you're not, just take a look at it. It's fun. Anyway, so I'll take a few questions from you if you have any questions about social media or even about my jobs, whatever. Yes, sir.
So if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you.
Tell me what you think social media has really contributed to what this country faces now with fake news. It seems to me that that engine called social media is the engine that's driving this whole theory of fake news, because everybody can be a himself or herself news person, and around it goes, and you have a tweeter at the top that loves to play games with that.
The question's about fake news, and basically, and if I can just, because for those who couldn't hear it, and correct me if I got it wrong, is whether or not social media really is sort of the catalyst and the fuel for fake news, which has been so destructive on so many fronts. Look, there's no question. I guess that's why I tell you to take back the internet and take back social media. It is here. There's nothing, for all its warts and scars, there's nothing we can do about it. It is here. So the question is, we really need to conquer it and change it. As for the question of fake news, and I'm not saying it's no daunting task. Fake news is presented on various platforms. Some of the fake news is obvious. And you get like Twitter, or Google, Facebook, Twitter. All the tech executives were summoned to Capitol Hill to see what their responsibility is. And what these tech companies have said, these platforms, is, oh no, we don't have any responsibility because we're like the phone company. In other words, don't blame us for the obscene phone call or for the constant calls you get about paying your student loans even though you paid them 40 years ago that we're still getting, or whatever the call is. They're saying, we're just like the telephone, we're just a delivery system, which I don't agree. I think that these tech platforms, these tech companies, I think they're much more akin to something like the Drudge Report. They are aggregators of information and news. So here's my warning as a lawyer, is my first career. My warning to these tech companies is if I were you, I would start coming up with a solution as to how to fight fake news in conjunction with the cooperation of the American people and other people, because we're all in this together. We all got to do this. Because if these tech companies don't do something, whether it's some algorithms or whether they, when certain articles become suspect, that they come down if they get tagged, or whether they're in a different color ink on your page or whatever it is, if they don't, they got to come up with a solution. If they do not, I suspect Congress is going to do something. They're going to start regulating them. Now we got all, and believe me, I don't think any business wants to be regulated by Congress. That's the last thing they want. So now we have all that problem, plus of course we have the First Amendment problems. Our responsibility, and this is not an easy one, but in recognition of the fact that social media is here to stay, is that we, all of us and children and grandchildren, that we have to be better consumers of news. We have to be more aggressive. We have to compare and contrast. It's not easy. It gives us more of a job. When I read news, I'm a consumer of news just like you are. I read multiple sources because I don't trust every source. It's not that I think people are dishonest, but I think they can get it wrong. They have a different perspective. Is that we're just going to have to be careful, much better consumers. But social media is here. There's no question that we are getting more fake news because it's like putting it on crack with a faster delivery system. I agree with you, but we've got to be better consumers of news, and the tech companies have to be better stewards of their job. Is that answered, sort of?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
We can talk.
Well, I think an example of that is the story that was in the Washington Post this morning about the company that tried to trick the reporters into believing that she was a victim of Roy Moore. And what I was struck by was the fact that if that had gone out, in listening to you talk, if that had gone out as a tweet without the Post being involved at all, that probably could be a very big story for a while until it got, discounted. But the fact that this Post has their standards really is what prevented that from happening.
Well, let me give you another example, which is similar. Is that over the weekend there was someone who tweeted to me that Alan Dershowitz, Harvard law professor, is a pedophile. No, it's just a lie. Okay, it's just a lie. First of all, it's accusing him of a crime, which is libel per se, and the reason it was predicated on a prior, some other story 6 or 8 months ago when someone else did it, and Alan had to go out and hire lawyers, and he shut it down, and the lawyers I mean, it's just, I mean, there's no question it's a lie, and I won't get into the whole factual background. But the thing is that first story spawned this tweet that was tweeted to me. I then tweeted that if I were Alan Dershowitz, I'd sue for defamation. Because unless people start standing up to this stuff, is that it's not going to stop. A few defamation suits against people who are so reckless or mean or cruel or intentionally do these things, that may do some part to stopping this. This is not going to be an easy struggle to beat all the horrible things that get put on. But you don't want to. I'm big on the First Amendment. You don't want to just because of some of the horrible stuff on. I don't want to throw out the internet. It's not going away anyway. I'm not going to throw out social media. It's not going anywhere. So we can all I don't believe me. I read stuff about myself. You think I don't read stuff about myself that's either it's not even insulting, but some of it's factually wrong? I read that about I read that about, I don't like it. But social media is here, so we're going to, it really is incumbent upon us to be more aggressive to at least recognize that it's here and to try to at least make it better. Any questions? Oh, yes, sir.
With social media, with all the high tech it allows us to have, how do you balance it, or how do you retain the high touch to get people actually to do something and believe something rather than just the factoid or the short blurb or the hurtful comment? Lyndon Johnson said you don't have to prove a guy's been screwing sheep, you just have to say it one time and it's out there. How do you counteract that, and how do you get people to move the needle?
I think we have to look a little bit at ourselves, because what I find often is that people are much more willing to believe awful things about people they don't agree with politically or don't like, and disbelieve the awful things that are said about people they like. And I think that we all have a little bit of responsibility in all this. It also helps is that news organizations have to police their reporting better. But as a consumer, is that you just can't believe everything that you said. Is fact check it. Fact check things you read. Chances are, if it seems too good to believe it's true, it's probably not true. And not just sort of seize on the fact that if you don't like one political candidate and something awful is said, that you necessarily agree it, and then of course that you don't retweet it. It's like people will retweet awful things about others. It's not just the original author. People will retweet things because they think, and retweet it. This is an important discussion, I think, not here tonight, I don't mean this, but just in terms of how, all of us and how we and how the sort of, even how the nation wants to think of how, just from a value standpoint, how we want to use the internet and social media. Yes?
Do you think Trump's Twitter habit is something that's overall good or overall bad?
Well, it depends how you define good or bad. I will say
Getting the message out to the American people.
Well, to the extent that they're factually correct, that's one issue. To the extent that they're not, if any tweet, just fundamentally, any tweet that's factually wrong is bad. I happen to like manners. I don't find his tweets having a lot of manners. I suspect if he were here, he would say that he doesn't punch first, but that he punches back, and then of course he nukes. And there's a lot of some bit the truth that he doesn't take the first strike, but boy, he hits hard back, and sometimes unfairly back. I don't. This is a whole new era. This of sort of tweets and social media and presence. We didn't have much of that with President Obama. President Obama, though. He likes manners too, I think. I mean, he's never. I mean, in his 8 years, I don't remember him being disrespectful. So that's just me. I like look at my tweets. I hope they're good manners. But think about this. They were effective for him. He did get elected president of the United States with them. So it's hard to sort of tell him, that they're bad. If you don't like Trump, they are horrible. if you like Trump, everybody, he's just getting his message out to the people. It really depends on who you ask. That's the problem with much of the stuff. The interesting sort of thing is that at one point, I think it was Sean Spicer said early on in the administration that these were official statements of the White House, which actually sort of raises an interesting question. He said something like that, because if they are, then sort of the thorny issue that no one sort of addressed is whether or not he can block people. If they're official statements. I don't know where that discussion's going or where it's headed, but I haven't heard it for a while, but it's sort of interesting. But I'll tell you that people who like Trump, they have no problem with his tweets. Those who hate him find them appalling. Any more questions? Come on. All right, good.
By the way, I miss you on Fox.
Thank you.
Fox is going downhill. I mean, all the crap. But anyways.
There's a lot going on there.
I met Bernie
But I
Goldberg.
got to tell you, I got a lot of good friends there too. Just so you know. But anyway, go ahead, sir.
Well, I met Bernie Goldberg up at a Phillies game, and we had a good side talk. What was your favorite interview you ever did? You were so excited you couldn't wait to do it. And then what is one person you regret you never got, or you're still looking to achieve that interview?
Wow. Favorite interview. I don't know, my husband can probably help me with that one if he knows who I would say was my favorite interview. I think, they're not so much interviews. It's really, I like, oddly enough, being behind the camera, and sort of, I went to North Korea 3 times, and to turn the camera, and show people things. I love that. I mean, you don't get any honest information out of there. But, that to me, there's nothing like it. Or even like going in the Nuba Mountains and thinking that maybe I could help these people, maybe. And to think of it as like, take Bob Levinson, who is a former FBI agent who is missing in Iran since March of 2009. And the Twitter handle is Help Bob Levinson. And he has been left behind by the American people in the sense that we're not pushing to find out what happened to him. There have been periodic efforts by different people over the years, but it takes me 1/2 a second in the morning before my coffee periodically to sort of say, let's not forget Help Bob Levinson. The media needs to put a spotlight on it. And I think to myself, I really enjoy doing that because it's just a small effort that, I know the family sees, and maybe sometime someone will come forward and say something, or maybe some administration will pick it up. So I guess the ones I like the most is where I think I can have just a little bit of an impact, and it's not showbiz. I like that. So those are my favorite, where you sort of, at the end of the day, you just sort of feel like maybe you made a difference, some difference. Because, there are a lot of things that, on TV that don't necessarily make a difference in the day. So those are my favorite. What didn't I get? Let's see. Boy, a lot I didn't get. I wish Angela Merkel would do an interview with me. She won't. She won't do it with anyone. It's not just me. But I would love to interview Angela Merkel. And I can't, she doesn't do it with anybody. I'm trying to think who else I'd like to do an interview with. I'd love President Bashir of Sudan. But I think we'd probably have to do it by Skype because I don't think he feels too good about me, and I don't feel too good about him. A Skype interview. I'm trying to think who else. Who else, John? Queen Elizabeth. Wouldn't that be to die for? That would be to die for, Queen Elizabeth. That would be. You know what she was doing during World War II? She could have left London during the bombing, and she stayed there. Was she on the motor? What do they call it? The motor what? She's in the motor pool. Imagine that. She could have done anything. She could have gone to Canada and hid out. What? Yeah. Can you imagine being able to interview Queen Elizabeth? Wouldn't that be fun? There's so many so exciting ones, but even something like Natalie Holloway. I'd love to solve that case because the funny thing, Natalie Holloway is, that story, Missing Girl in Aruba, is because I was out in California covering something, and I got back to D.C., and I get a call from New York, and they say, could you go to Aruba? There's a missing college girl. I thought, oh, brother. And I said, I was a college girl. I know she found, she probably found a boyfriend and a couple of people, and I sat drinking. She missed her flight, right? It's like, who doesn't know that story? stupid kid, you know. So anyway, I didn't want to, but anyway, I said, all right, I will. So I went down to Aruba, and based on my training, I always want to investigate everything. I always want to see it for myself, you know, because it's so much different when you see it. And I went from I said, as we were going down there, I said, where was she staying? And she was staying at some Holiday Inn. So I said, okay, what room number? And they told me the room number. So I got off the plane, landed, and just went to the Holiday Inn. That wasn't even where I was staying. And so I go in and I, you know, sort of act like, you know, I was staying there. Nobody stopped me. I mean, and I go up to the room and I knock on the door. And I really had a bad attitude because I really didn't want to do this story at all because I just thought she's probably already back on a plane going home while I'm sitting here in, you know, in Aruba, you know. And you know, when we travel, it's not like you think. Like, we fly to Aruba, and everybody in the plane would get off and go to the beach. We'd go to the landfill while they're still digging. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm exaggerating. It's like, it's not what people think. But anyway, so I knocked on the door in Aruba, and this woman with strawberry blonde hair answers. And it was Natalie's mother, Beth. I wasn't even expecting anyone really to answer it. And she said, come in. And so I came in, and of course, then I felt bad because I'd said a bad attitude. And so we sat down, and for some reason we sat on the floor. I don't even know why. And she's a little bit younger I am, but we sort of felt the same age. And she was telling me, she was showing me all. She'd gotten there 2 days ahead, and she was showing me all these things that she'd done to try to find Natalie. And over in the corner was Natalie's suitcase, wide open, half-packed, because Natalie had half-packed it before she went out that night because she was planning on leaving the next day. And the story finally sunk into me how real it was. And I was like, and I felt terrible. So, you know, so I stayed on it. I stayed on the case because I don't know if you've ever met a parent who's lost a child. Or a child has died. I mean, you like practically look through their eyes into their soul. I mean, it's so. I mean, the loss is so incredible, and so I told Beth because I told Beth a couple days later that this is what my biggest fear with Beth was because by then now all the media is descending on Aruba, and I said to Beth, Beth, I want to tell you something. There will come a time when everybody leaves. And it's just horrible because the media comes in and acts like we're here to help you, you know, and they're all good-hearted people, believe me. But all of a sudden, you know, the story gets old or whatever it is, we moved on, which is why we don't hear about Help Bob Levinson anymore. That's an old story, but he's still missing, and the family still waits for the call. So anyway, I told Beth that the only thing I could do is I promised that before I left, if ever we got pulled out of here, that I would call her. And I said it was a call I didn't want to make to her. She was staying at a different hotel. So this was sometime in early June. And then about July 7th or so, I get awakened by a call from Fox in New York saying they want me to go to London. There'd been a subway bombing or something. And the first thing I thought of was, oh, brother, everyone's going to pull out of here. And now, you know, poor Beth, she's going to be stuck here alone. So I made that phone call, and I said, this is that phone call. You know, I think everybody's pulling out. You know, all the news organizations. And they pretty much pulled out. Some came back a little bit later. But anyway, my point is this, is that you get hooked into these stories, and you get to know these people, and they're not just stories. I've met Bob Levinson's family so many times. They were up here in September, and I sat around for about 2 hours having coffee at some hotel with them, you know, trying because they're up here talking to the State Department, seeing if anything can be done to find Bob. And so the stories that I sort of get away, besides it'd be fun to talk to Queen Elizabeth, the really sort of the unfinished stories, especially for the families. I'd love to get the information or help provoke the information for the Levinson family. I'd love to get the information for Beth Holloway just so that they can finally end because they sit around. It may seem absurd, but they're waiting for the phone call. So those are my regrets. More questions? Yes, sir.
So I really like the point that you make with social media being constantly evolving and even it being really difficult to write a book when everything changes so quickly. And my thought now is, well, now that we kind of bookmark this era of social media where we kind of see Twitter in a way dwindling for the younger generations, Facebook gaining more steam as it controls more advertising power, and Instagram even taking the lead now in some of the engagement piece that Twitter used to do. How do you see the new trends of social media taking a hold of how we look at it? And even pages like Reddit even controlling the conversation.
All
So.
right. Okay, that sounds like a fixed question. You want to know my answer to that? And this is my marketing campaign. Ready for this? It's not about the book. On the same day that I launched the book, you're not okay. I'm not kidding. Same day I launched the book, I launched something else. I launched the Sorry app. Okay, the Sorry app, which is actually sort of funny. It's a free download. Go to the App Store, and you can only do it on your phone. And the Sorry app is I'm trying to compete with Snap, with Instagram, and others. And here's the way. There are several different features. First, it's your generation, for reasons I do not understand. Doesn't use a telephone and doesn't do things in person. You do things like this. You're all going to need chiropractors because you're all like this. I don't get that. But you communicate so much by texting and video. Believe me, it's like, but anyway, you do it. So anyway, I figure that, you know what we don't do enough in this country is looking at ourselves. It's always the other guy who's doing things wrong. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have an apology app, a Sorry app? So I created the Sorry app. And it's sort of fun. The first feature we rolled out is a more public feature where you can do an apology. In fact, Senator Klobuchar did one for me last night, and hers is very funny. She apologizes to her husband because in 1993 when they married, she couldn't think of his middle name when they registered for gifts. She couldn't remember it. Okay, so it's sort of fun, sort of light. But anyway, so you get to watch the video, and then anybody who has the app gets to look at the video. It's a free thing. And then after watching the video, you write accept or reject, or you tap accept or reject, so that it sort of adds up as scores, so you know whether. The thinking is if you're like a really bad person, like I've done something really bad. Let's say, I know. I mean, there are a lot of things like Dove Corporation. They got in a whole bunch of trouble for an ad, or Kathy Griffin for her thing, beheaded thing. Is that you can do serious ones if you want, and then everybody everyone decides, like when you watch the Kathy Griffin one, it's not on there, but if it were, is that because we just launched it, is everyone gets to vote whether it's accepted or rejected, whether you believe it or not. I mean, is it just a phony apology or is it a real thing? It's like you get to do it. So it's sort of a public thing. We've just begun to populate. I've got a lot with my dogs on it, apologizing for my dogs. Every time the mail comes through the slot, they chew it up, okay? And it's like they don't really care, but I put them on anyway to see if they're apologizing. So so there are light things too. But the other feature, which is more for your generation, is akin to Snap. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Snap. Snap are these videos that it started off sending videos to another person, and after you watched it, it disappeared. So using that sort of idea on my Sorry app is that if I were going to apologize to you, and I don't want anybody else to know what I did wrong or whatever, and I just want to do it to you because I wronged you, I send it to you peer-to-peer on another feature, and you get it, you accept it or reject it, and it disappears. Now, the reason it disappears is because I don't want you, in case you reject it, go show all your friends, look what Van Susteren, she's such a loser, look what she did, okay? So it's going to disappear. You can't use it. If you accept it, maybe I'll make a phone call to you. Maybe I'll use e-commerce, send you some chocolates or some flowers, or maybe I'll send an Uber to pick you up or anything. That's what we're looking at down the road. But there are other features that we're rolling into. It's a whole rollout in terms of time. So my favorite is, do you know what hashtag TBT is? Everybody know what that is? Okay, I saw a nod, but the age groups nodded. The certain age groups nodded yes. Okay, hashtag TBT it means Throwback Thursday. That means something old. It's something that like a picture from when you were a kid or whatever. We're gonna put in a Throwback Thursday. It's Throwback Thursday that you do it on. Apologies. It might be Nixon for Watergate, and you listen to his apology, and we all vote now. I don't think so, reject. Or you might think like, thinking about 30 years later, that was a pretty good apology. I didn't like what he did, but it's a good apology. Or maybe it's, somebody else doing something else. I mean, it's extraordinary. This is a figure that, on social media, in April, we ran the analytics. On social media, in one 24-hour period, you know how often people apologize or use the word sorry? Over 475,000 times. That was last April. 475,000. So I thought, why don't we just have a little fun and let's look at it. In fact, here's what I learned about myself though. about it. I wanted to populate it in the beginning, so I did a couple apps. I did a couple videos, and I learned about myself is that when I apologize, and then I give you a whole string of reasons why it was okay. I was late, but the traffic was bad. There were people in my way. It was like all this. It wasn't like I was late because I didn't think ahead and figure out it was rush hour or whatever it is. But anyway, so now I'm much more careful in my apologies. So I think I'm a little more circumspect about how I apologize because I didn't realize. I had no idea I did that. And the other funny thing is with my husband is that if let's say that I'm not the nicest, like I'm a little crabby, is that remember the old AOL, you got mail? Now I want to start to you need the app. Sort of fun. So anyway, I don't know. It really is sort of a question is whether we can sort of change. Look, it's not an easy job to change the internet around the bad stuff. It's always going to be there, but at least we could flood it with the fun, the good, the educational, the exciting, the adventurous, and I would just like to see more of that, and not discourage people away from it, but encourage people to get involved in. I haven't talked. See, I haven't talked to him. I haven't say. I don't. I have. It's funny. People always think that I have access to people I don't have access to. Any more questions? Did I say anything yet tonight that's gotten me in trouble? By the way, I always wonder that. I always wonder. Not yet.
Check your social media.
Check my social media. I'll need the sorry about. I'll tell you Senator Klobuchar's was hysterical. She's a good sport. Hers was funny. Anyone else? Yeah.
One last question.
Okay, great.
This was a number of years ago when this social media thing got started, and I remember reading that it could mean the end of hypocrisy because young people were putting so much stuff on their Facebook pages and other profiles that they couldn't be called out about anything because there was evidence that that's what they really were, or those were really their attitudes or their ideas or their beliefs or something. And I thought, well, that sounds like a good thing, the end of hypocrisy. Do you see that at all?
I don't see that. Of course, I live
Yeah, I
in
don't
Washington. I don't look. We're all. We're all. I catch myself being critical of people and thinking like, oh, I do the same thing. In a different way. So I don't know. I think hypocrisy is going to outlast social media. But that's just me. Anyway, good. Thank you very much for all coming. I'm going to sign some books, maybe. Thank you.